Welcome back, everyone, to another new, very special episode of the Nic Cage Fight Podcast, where we all got together and went on a podcast field trip to the movie theater to see Renfield. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by Rich and Ryan.
I'm still drunk from that day, actually.
It was a long night.
I'm in the thrall of Dracula.
At least you're still not drunk from that night, because Jesus Christ.
No, I had like 3 beers and I was good.
Yeah,
The beer selection
cocktails.
was not good enough for me to get hammered, honestly.
See, that was the problem for me. The cocktail selection was interesting and like right up my particular alley. So I was like, oh, I gotta try a bunch of them. And then when you get a cocktail, you're just sort of locked in for the rest of the night. You're not downgrading.
You're not gonna have one cocktail. You're gonna have 8.
And you're not gonna switch to a less alcoholic beverage, even if you know it's probably the smart choice. So usually I don't preface any of these episodes with a spoiler warning because we're talking about old movies, which if you hadn't seen at this point, it's kind of on you. And on top of that, we're like a synopsis / movie review podcast. You kind of know what you're getting into, I would think. But in this case, since this movie just came out, I will put a warning right now as soon as we get into it, literally in housekeeping. There's going to be potential spoilers for you regarding the contents of this movie based on what we saw in trailers and shit like that. So with that out of the way, you have been forewarned. We're jumping right into it. Renfield, obviously a 2023 release, R-rated, clocking in at a smooth hour and 33 minutes.
Which we love. We love that here.
We love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So starting right off with the director, this film was directed by Chris McKay, who has directed a number of things. Movie-wise, they did the Lego Batman movie. Also, The Tomorrow War, which is a movie, but I think it was like an Amazon exclusive or something like that. I don't think it was a theatrical release.
Yeah, film. It was like just an Amazon exclusive, and it was like I remember it was a Chris Pratt vehicle right when people were like getting ready to cancel Chris Pratt.
Yeah, I remember that too. It's some like fucking fight aliens movie, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. He also wrote the Dungeons and Dragons movie that's currently out.
Correct. But he also, my favorite thing that he worked on personally is he directed 20 episodes of Moral Oral, which, if you were raised in an evangelical household, is a solid show to watch to work through your personal traumas. Also worked on Robot Chicken, directing, and also I think directed their third Star Wars special. Again, Robot Chicken specifically. But that's the highlights that I found.
He was actually on the first 2. He was the editor of the first and the animator on the second.
And I do want to throw in a correction. He was the story by guy for the D&D movie, which had 3 separate screenwriters, none of which were him.
Okay. So he wrote the story, but not the actual script.
Yeah, which we actually do have an interesting story by guy for this movie.
And he also just says, I want to shout out one of my favorite shows of all time. He was an editor on the Sarah Silverman Project.
Ooh.
Or the Sarah Silverman program.
Yeah, no, I missed that as well.
Yeah, it just happens to be one of my favorite shows ever.
So moving on to writers, we have Ryan Ridley, who did the screenplay. Ryan Ridley had an interesting CV. They did one episode of the American version of The In-Betweeners, which I contest was canceled way too early because that show was fucking hilarious.
I think I've seen the British one. Is that the one where the kid has to piss in the can because they're on a road trip and he cuts his dick?
I don't remember if that bit made it into the American one, but in the American one, one of the kids was the guy from, I think his most famous role that I remember him from was he was in Meet the Millers or whatever. He was the kid with the no regrets tattoo on his chest. He plays one of the characters in the American In-Betweeners and also is one of the funniest characters. He plays like an airhead sort of stoner guy. And I think in one of the introductory episodes, he's a mascot at some, like Six Flags stand-in theme park. And so his friends go to visit him while he's at work. And they're in the dressing room, and he's like, "Oh, the suit has a cup." And he's like, okay. And he's like, it's not for what you think. He's like, I don't want to know. He's like, it's so you don't get boners around the kids. And he's like, it's worse than I thought. But Ryan Ridley also worked on Community, Rick and Morty, and one episode of the Invincible show, which makes a lot of sense when you get to the second writer, the based on an original idea by Guy, Robert Kirkman, most famous for the Walking Dead comic and Invincible. Again, the comic. Both of these were made into shows. Walking Dead was made into too many shows, some would argue. Whereas
I'm still waiting on Battle Pope, his best comic, to actually get an adaptation.
I was gonna mention that as well, but I
You
figured
gotta
everybody
mention
would
Battle
know.
Pope.
Fair enough. But also, I mean, like Invincible was really solid. The first season or whatever that came out was better than I thought. So there you go.
I was pretty happy with it. I've read every issue of that series.
Yeah, that was a very good series.
The only thing I know about Invincible is the meme, the look what they have to do to mimic a fraction of our power.
Yeah.
There was a couple of memes specifically from like the final or penultimate episode of that show specifically. They had me at the end of episode 1 on that. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's worth your time. There's no Nic Cage in it, but still solid enough. Moving on to cast, we have Nic Cage as Dracula. There you go. Next up, we have Nicholas Hoult as Renfield. Nicholas Hoult has been in a number of things, including Mad Max Fury Road, Warm Bodies. He plays Beast in the newer X-Men movies. I don't know really how to delineate that segment of, X-Men media, but
I think post First Class is when they start switching over, and I don't think it's like changed since then in terms of core cast.
yeah, it really hasn't. He was also in Tolkien, playing J.R. Tolkien, and very recently was in The Menu, which is a solid movie, in my opinion.
I quite liked The Menu.
I enjoyed it.
Very mean-spirited film. I like mean fucking black comedies.
Next up, we have Awkwafina as Rebecca. Awkwafina was in the Shang-Chi Marvel movie, Raya and the Last Dragon, one of the new Jumanjis. I'm not going to lie, most of her career has sort of been outside of my particular purview of media in general.
She does stand-up comedy too, if I'm not mistaken.
She's also in a what I find is a very funny show, I believe on HBO called Awkwafina is Nora from Queens.
Oh, I have seen like clips from that.
And
I haven't watched it.
It's kind of like just gross out humor.
Okay,
Man,
I was going to say I'm not
sometimes.
familiar and was curious what the premise was.
It's kind of like a raunchier Broad City.
All
Broad
right.
City was already kind of raunchy, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was like Comedy Central. This is
Oh, gotcha.
This is what if Broad City was on HBO and you just took both of the leads and squished them into one lead.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay.
Yeah.
And next up, this is the individual I was referring to as a spoiler in Housekeeping, because I don't recall seeing his character at all in any of the trailers or promotional material. And he's in the movie quite a bit. And that would be Ben Schwartz. As also, this movie gave me a laugh post watching it when I started doing the housekeeping notes for this, because they refer to him in the movie at least every time. I didn't catch them refer to his character by this name at any point in the movie, but he is credited as Tedward Lobo. They call him Teddy, but apparently that is short for Tedward.
That's pretty good.
Which is pretty funny. So Ben Schwartz, if you're not familiar, is from Parks and Recreation, the Jean Ralphio character, which
is the only reason to watch Parks and Recreation.
Yeah. But he also is the voice of Sonic the Hedgehog in the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. He was in Space Force. And then, just to avoid people accusing us of not mentioning this specifically, he was a member of a 2-person comedy group that also did like a special or a film called Middleditch and Schwartz.
Yeah, which is the guy from Silicon Valley.
Yeah, Thomas Middleditch. And I heard some not great things about him, and he fell off of the at least my radar of the public spectrum and discourse quite
Oh,
some time ago.
I had no idea about that. So,
Yeah.
whoops.
Unfortunately, I think that plagued a couple of people from Silicon Valley.
Well,
Yeah, it did.
yeah.
And before we get off Ben Schwartz, I want to shout out two things he's been doing voice work wise because he's pretty good. He's in the new DuckTales, which is
Oh, that's right.
surprisingly charming for a DuckTales reboot. And he's also Leo in Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the honestly best animated TMNT show in a long time.
I will also shout out House of Lies. I enjoyed that show. He was one of the liars.
But yeah, Ben Schwartz, and he is a pretty straightforward comedy vehicle in this film. Next up, we have an actress whose name I'm absolutely going to butcher, and that is Shure Agdashlu.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that name, I'm just like, this is
I
going to
think
be...
it's Agdashalu. I think. I could be mistaken. I mean, I'd have to pull up like a press tour thing from her where somebody says her name correctly, but I didn't have the foresight to do that.
I don't want to be
also-
canceled, so I'm not going to try.
Yeah, also our clip of us saying her name is not going to be used as a reference point
Yes,
because
please
we
do not.
definitely are not getting it correct. But she plays Bella Francesca Lobo. And she has been in House of Sand and Fog, The Expanse, Star Trek Beyond. Pretty sure she was in 24, a number of things.
She's in Mass Effect.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, she does a lot of voice work.
Yeah, she's in Destiny too.
She is. I noticed she did a fair amount of like voiceover work.
Yeah.
Next up we have Adrian Martinez as Chris. I threw him in housekeeping because he was funny in the few bits that he was in the film. The only two things I saw that stood out in his CV though was Focus and The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Was he the guy in Focus that like literally stole an ATM?
I don't remember.
I
Maybe.
think he was, but it's fine. He was also in Kick-Ass. He was a goon.
Oh, I love standard goons.
Yeah, he was a standard goon in Kick-Ass.
Oh, that's funny. I missed that completely.
I watched the first 3 John Wick movies over the past couple of days, and those movies have some good goons.
I noticed that when I saw your tweets. I was like, wow, he's going on a full Wick run.
Well, I found them for like $5 a piece. I was like, well, I guess I just got to buy all the John Wicks.
They're very, very entertaining. And I heard an anecdote. I did not look into whether or not it's true, so don't yell at me, everybody, if I'm wrong. But apparently, the guy who made the John Wick films worked on the original Crow movie, which resulted in the death of an actor. And the John Wick films are apparently in the industry lauded for their strict gun safety regulations that they utilize while filming. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I saw
interesting.
I saw that Keanu Reeves gives like all the stunt guy, like he gave them all like $100,000 Rolexes.
Well, he gave the stunt guys in one of the Matrix movies like motorcycles. Each one got a motorcycle.
Yeah. So
next up, we have Camille Chen as Kate, who was in Game Night, Spy Kids 3, and The New Guy.
The New Guy. That's a film I did not think I'd ever hear about again.
It's a name I haven't heard in quite some time. And then last shout out, because there's no way I wasn't going to mention him, Christopher Matthew Cook is back acting next to Nicolas Cage in this film as Bob. Christopher Matthew Cook, of course, in Dog Eat Dog, which we reviewed recently. Also Walking Dead, so there's your Kirkman connection, and Two Guns as just a goon. The most recent Wahlberg, Denzel Washington, Netflix action, whatever.
I'll do 2 shout outs. You skipped over Brendan Scott Jones, who plays the group leader at the church. He was in The Good Place as a not so good person.
Gotcha. That
very
is something
funny.
I never watched.
I actually recommend it emphatically. It's very fucking funny.
It's good. I actually think Ryan and I got into a little bit of an argument as to the greatest TV scene ever, where I said it was the scene from Community where Jeff and the Dean sing Kiss by a Rose.
Yeah.
And you said, no, it's the trolley problem scene from The Good Place.
Yeah, the trolley problem scene is premium television. My second shout out is going to be William Ragsdale, who plays Charlie Brewster in the Fright Night films. So we actually have a previous vampire movie connection there. He was also in another vampire thing called Nosferatu, spelled Nos, the number 4, the letter A, the number 2, which is based on a Joe Hill story. It was pretty good, middling. And we have another Nic Cage connection with this guy. He's in Left Behind.
Oh,
I
shit.
cannot wait to watch that movie.
I keep forgetting that's in the hopper. That's
And it can come at any time.
It could come at any time. And I got one more movie of his to shout out because I need to hunt this down. It looks absolutely atrocious. It's called Frankenstein, The College Years.
That sounds awful, and I need to see it.
Sounds so bad.
10 out of 10
so
on the
bad.
title, man.
Absolutely.
That's great. You have to let me know if you get your hands on that one, because I am curious.
It's got Larry Miller in it.
Huh. Okay.
All right, and that is going to wrap up housekeeping. Now, I know probably our diehard fans are still upset and disappointed at me about what happened with the National Treasure episode. But this one, I hate to break it to you, is going to be a little bit messy as well. Apparently, it is frowned upon to take copious notes with a little writing lamp while in an actual theater on the opening night of a film. So I'm going to be relying on my own recollection and the recollections of my co-hosts to stitch together the plot of this film. That being said, we want to give it a shot.
Yeah, so the first thing is these fucking people hate ska.
They fucking hate ska.
Wait, that's
not the first thing I know.
That's not the first
it is
thing.
the impression that I get from this film.
Actually, you know what? The very first thing, and I think this is going to help all of us, is goods and services. I've been hearing a lot about these, and much like going to a theater, you need to get bombarded with some advertisements for shit that you're not there to see before you get to what you actually paid for. So to recreate the theater experience for you, dear listener, here are some ads.
I really hope, as we just mentioned ska, that it's like an ad for like brass instruments.
No,
No,
see,
it's an
the
ad
funniest
for
thing
fucking
is-
checkerboard suspenders.
No, the funniest possible outcome, given it's a ska band, it's actually a paid advertisement by a ska band looking for a trombone player.
Yes, that is the best outcome. Be like, listen, we can't get that sweet ska sound. It's been tried before. You can't do it without trombone. 2 trumpets and a sax player, garbage. You need the trombone.
So the start of the film is essentially a very quick setup for this the story that's taking place in modern times. So it's like correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure exactly the order this came in, but it started with like the grainy black and white.
It starts with the them in group first, and then it jumps into the grainy black and white, which is all shots from Todd Browning's Dracula, which they Forrest Gumped Nicholas Hoult and Nic Cage into.
Gotcha. So did we get all right? Either way, it starts off in a group therapy session for people in toxic relationships or dealing with narcissistic partners in like a church basement, and we do get some. As we mentioned, some funny ska jokes, which were kind of hilarious. And the titular character, Renfield, is attending this to try and apply the lessons used by people in more mundane toxic relationships to deal with some of his issues with interacting with Dracula specifically. So we do get the intercuts of the grainy black and white footage about how Renfield found himself in this situation in the first place. So, we get some stories from some of the other folks there as well. The funniest bit about the lady dating the guy in a ska band is...
Oh, it's not even a guy in a ska band. It's some standard goon who's really into ska.
Okay, I thought he was in a ska band.
No, he's just a ska fan.
Yeah, he just loves ska.
He's got the fucking the Selector skanking dude on his t-shirt. You can't tell, I am probably the biggest ska fan on this podcast.
All right, in my personal opinion, there's nothing particularly wrong with ska. It's a punk offshoot with horns. It's fine.
Yeah, as somebody who has seen Catch 22 5 times.
That is an oversimplification. Ska predates punk by quite a few years, actually. It's originally a Jamaican musical form.
Listen, you sound like him.
I do sound like him.
You literally quoted almost verbatim one of the jokes in the film about ska.
It is 100% accurate, though. Ska started out as basically the Jamaican ripoff of American R&B and Motown, not punk. Punk co-opted ska in like the third wave of ska, of which there have been like 4. The first of which was the actual Jamaican wave of ska from like the late 60s into the late 70s. Then you had second wave ska, which is where you get the British ska, like the Specials, Selector.
I wish I had my soundboard right now to just be like, I'm bored.
No, but the funniest thing is this literally occurs in the film, where this lady is complaining about her ska superfan boyfriend, and somebody, much like me in the group, makes some derogatory remark about it, some sort of reductive commentary, and she says explicitly, she's like, that's actually really reductive as far as the overall sound of ska. Oh my god, who have I become?
She became me.
Clearly.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but me and the buddy I brought to go watch this, we're laughing the hardest at that fucking scene because we're both ska heads.
The ska joke landed, which is kind of funny because I thought making fun of ska kind of went out of vogue like 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Oh, it's never out of vogue. We are well aware that we are the butt of the like alt music jokes.
Yeah, you can always make fun of Operation Ivy.
Yes, absolutely.
I just remember ska jokes being more prevalent a couple years back. This is the first time I've seen one in the wild in a while. So
the only ska band you're not allowed to make fun of is Leftover Crack.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
let's go with that, and the Aquabats, because they're just children's birthday party music.
Yes.
Check out our spin-off podcast, Spirit in the Ska, coming soon.
We have so many spin-offs now at this point.
No, I think we should call it Ska-Getty and Meat Ska.
There you go. That's one thing we are very good at here, is just coming up with stupid names for podcasts, which are all just fucking puns. So as this goes on, we realize that one of the things that Renfield is doing in this group, on top of actually trying to find some coping methods for his personal issues, is targeting bad people to collect to feed Dracula. Now, at some point in there, we actually get what drove them to their current location, which is New Orleans, I believe.
Correct. Yes.
And what it was there was an attack on Dracula's castle, wherever they last were. And we get to see a fight, the first action sequence in the film, with Dracula and Renfield defending themselves against some Van Helsing types. So
I actually think it was supposed to be Van Helsing.
There was a guy with a hat.
So too, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a priest and like the literal Van Helsing.
It seemed more like Hammer horror, like British movie Dracula versus Van Helsing, than it does the actual Bram Stoker novel. So like, yeah, the guy kind of had a Peter Cushing vibe to him.
Yeah.
They didn't get Hugh Jackman for it, but you could basically tell who the character was.
Yeah.
So we get again a little action sequence here. We also see Dracula trapped in a circle of salt that is activated with some fancy Latin words to suspend him in the air and prevent him from doing anything. Renfield comes in, breaks the salt line, and then
he has to be cajoled by Dracula using some how shall I put this, narcissistic language, which ties into the like theming of the movie.
Yeah, what's gonna happen to you if I get killed, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so they launched into a fight, which one of the scenes you likely saw in the trailer does include Dracula turning into mist and flying into the mouth of the priest, who's in like full bishop regalia. I don't know why you had to go that dressed up. personally.
Because it
And
looked
then
cool. Oh, that's William Ragsdale, by the way. The guy that was in Fright Night is the
yes.
priest that blows up.
I feel like if you're a priest fighting a monster, you want to be camouflaged in just regular clothes, personally. Yeah. But this guy is wearing a big, pointy, hatted shaped target right on him, and Dracula turns in a mist, goes into the guy's mouth, and then reincorporates his physical body, exploding the bishop. And I'm going to call out this. I understand why they included this particular action scene in the trailer, because the explosion did include a fair amount of practical effects. In fact, a lot of the early screening reviews I saw really played up the use of practical effects in this film, which was one of my primary disappointments, because that was not
indicative
really
of the truth. Yeah.
As I was watching it, I'm just like, it seems to be a lot of CGI going on here.
There was a lot of CGI blood.
It was mostly CGI. Like, the exploding bishop was the best practical effect in the film, in my opinion, and they burnt it in the trailer to get people like me who like practical effects be like, oh, this might be fucking awesome. But yeah, so there you go. However, at the end of this fight, something I can't remember exactly what happens, but basically the drapes get ripped down or damaged in some way, and Dracula is hit with the full force of the sun and burnt very, very badly. And so this is what provokes the move of Dracula and Renfield, and Renfield actually recounts several moves like this over time. So I'm not sure that they go to New Orleans directly from the site of this attack, but it's basically implied they move around a lot because Dracula gets attacked with some level of regularity.
So, funny anecdote: the castle that they're supposedly staying at the beginning of the movie is the castle from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Huh. No shit.
Yeah, apparently, according to IMDb trivia.
So back to present day group therapy. Renfield now has a list of names of shitty people who are ruining other people's lives by being, toxic partners in a relationship, and uses this to justify a death sentence on them to feed them to a monster. I did like the return to that several times throughout the course of the film, where like Renfield seems to want to try and be a better person, but his concept of reduced harm is wildly out of whack. But that's me reading a little bit into it explicitly. There's not a lot of room for deep thought in this film. So Renfield ends up going out to track down the ska fan boyfriend, who apparently has stolen cocaine, or one of his friends has stolen cocaine. There's stolen cocaine involved.
Lots of stolen cocaine.
Yes, a large amount of it.
Like bricks of it.
Yeah, like the entire delivery from what was that movie with Fishburne and Cage?
Running with the Devil.
Running with the Devil. Yeah, the entire Running with the Devil shipment worth of stolen cocaine. And so when Renfield shows up to attack the bad boyfriend, an assassin hired by the gang that the drugs were stolen from attacks at the same time, and we get our next action sequence of a bunch of fighting and Renfield doing his thing. Oh, I think we get informed in the previous action scene that Renfield's whole bit is if he eats bugs, he gets temporary Dracula superpowers.
Which I thought was kind of a bullshit, like, over fucking world building for this. You don't need to over explain why Renfield's able to do this stuff with, he's got a magic system where his mana potions are bugs. Don't do that shit, writers. It's not necessary.
Well, they needed it for like MacGuffin and tension in fights as the movie develops.
That is fair. But again, I just don't think it's that necessary. He's got magic Dracula powers. Just like he's got magic Dracula powers.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just, the way they set up the conflicts in this film, it was kind of necessary. And also, your idea that it is stupid is absolutely reinforced by my least favorite part with Ben Schwartz in it, but we'll get to it when we get to it. So, assassin, narcissistic boyfriend, Renfield, and the boyfriend's various buddies, big bloodbath fight. And this is also where we get introduced to Tedward Lobo, who is outside in like a fancy sports car, explaining. I can't remember if he's on the phone with his mom, who runs the gang, or just somebody else, letting them know that he's hired some assassin goon to take care of the punks that stole their drugs, right?
Yeah, and one of the what I thought was a pretty funny scene in there too was when Renfield shows up. He starts giving like this menacing like monologue to them, and they just start throwing the drugs at him. Like, you're not here for the stolen drugs. He's like, no, what is this?
Yeah, and that's when the dude in the weird fucking hood and a bunch of machetes, like gangs would send assassins that their whole thing is fucking bladed weapons in a modern era of America where everybody has a gun.
You know what this dude reminds me of? It's like early 2000s direct to DVD horror movie slashers.
Yes.
No, who he reminded me of, honestly, was the Machine from 8mm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
kinda.
Yeah.
Kind of like a mix between him and Leatherface, I guess.
Yeah.
I was sort of waiting for them to unmask him, and I could just be like, is that Frank Sabatka?
That would have been an awesome fucking Nic Cage reference in this film. I would have appreciated that. At any rate, the assassin, the boyfriend, and all of the boyfriend's friends are dispatched. I think the fight spills over into the street because I'm fairly certain the severed head of the assassin gets thrown against Teddy Lobo's car, which causes him to speed off.
That happens.
Yes.
I think it's punched through like the door and then it hits the car. I don't know
Oh,
if
does
the
he
fight...
punch his head off? Is that what
Yes,
happens?
That is what
Yeah.
happens.
Yep.
Okay. So Teddy takes off at this point, and I think this is where we get the aside that introduces the other primary protagonist, because as Teddy speeds off with, of course, a bunch of drugs in his car, like high-level gang members don't have mules to do this type of transportation for them, but he gets stuck in a DUI checkpoint. However, he doesn't expect to have any issues with it because we learn very quickly this gang is sort of connected and has purchased influence and power throughout the entirety of the city. However, he gets stopped by Aquafina's character, Rebecca, who's relegated to working, DUI checkpoints, who does give him shit for it and tries to arrest him or something like that. And we do get not the first, I'm sorry. There's a couple of funny parts before this, but one of the funniest parts to me is when Teddy Lobo flees his vehicle with a bunch of kilos of cocaine as the cops chase him, threatening to tase him, and he is whipping packs of cocaine at them. In fact, one of them hits Adrian Martinez's character full in the face and explodes.
When he's yelling, I have a prescription as he's running away.
Yeah, I'm about to say he gets totally arrested, and we get the sense that like he's not very good at this.
Yeah, he's the fail son of a drug kingpin, basically.
Yes, he
But
is coasting along on the name.
Yeah, the kilo of cocaine exploding in the one cop's face is hilarious. Reminded me of the this is the end scene where the one character goes, "Hey, does this cocaine smell funny to you?" and blows a pile of it into another character's face. So Teddy Lobo is arrested, and Rebecca is excited to try and get this high-level gangster off the street. However, when they get back to the police station, Teddy's basically released. You get the impression right off the bat, like I said, that the gang basically has the upper echelon of the police department in their pocket, and that's what's protecting him. We also get a little bit of backstory as she is reprimanded by the chief of police. Her dad was like a hero cop who was murdered by this gang at some point.
So apparent that the family name is actually kind of interesting to me because it's a reference to the original Dracula novel. She's Rebecca Quincy. Her father was whatever Quincy. Quincy P. Morris being one of the three suitors of Lucy in the original Dracula.
Gotcha.
Got to shout that out. Dracula might be my favorite novel of all time.
Well, there you go. At least they cared enough about the source material to throw some Easter eggs here and there, right?
Right. Yeah. It's pretty jam-packed with good Dracula Easter eggs.
Yeah. Rebecca, we also find out that Rebecca's sister works for the FBI, just because that does come into play later on, but I think it's just sort of casually mentioned here. They also set up a minimally recurring joke with a character, another police officer who I think their name was Kyle in it.
That
Who's
sounds right.
Yeah, where
based,
it's just it's
he's the chief of police's hype man. So like when the chief of police says something, he's like, yeah, or something like that. And it's kind of funny. His character legitimately did crack me up. I did not call him out in housekeeping.
well, because he doesn't really have any lines if people just tell him to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, no, he only has 2 or 3 scenes, but I did really like those scenes.
Well, it's good that his name was Kyle. Everybody knows a Kyle that like you're just like fucking Kyle, man.
He was apparently in one episode of True Detective, and the actor's name was T.C. Matherne.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know what season of True Detective he was in.
It says 2019, so like the season 3, I'm assuming.
Season 3 was good. Honestly, I liked all of the seasons of True Detective. Just unfortunately, they they made the mistake of putting their best foot forward.
Oh yeah,
So
I mean, if you're gonna do a fucking weird detective thing, do it about the King in Yellow, and then never do anything again.
that would probably have been smarter, despite the fact that I think season 2 and season 3 can stand just fine on their own merits.
Yeah, season
It's
2's got a lot of David Lynch in its DNA, which I do appreciate.
and 3 I actually really enjoyed as well. The problem was they came out way too strong. So every subsequent season, people were like, this isn't as good as the first season. You're like, that doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of True Detective, listeners, you can detect this ad break coming up. That was bad. That was bad.
That's fine. It was a decent segue. You saved me from trying to come up with one because I knew we had one coming up.
Yeah, I checked the time and I'm just like, whatever we're talking about True Detective. Fuck, how do I get this? How do I work this in? All right, hope everybody liked detecting those ads for BYU.
See, this is why we need like paid advertisements so we could do our own ad reads, because you could have interrupted with I'm sorry to inform you, dear listeners, there's been a murder with the new framing hammer from Ace Hardware. Go down, get your own now. It's on sale for a limited time. Sorry, Ace, don't sue us, man. I'm just joking. I'm sure most of your tool purchases are for completely legitimate means and not murder.
Yeah,
the
not
most
for hiding bodies.
Correct. I don't know, man. Those circular saws.
They do work.
They do, in fact, work as advertised.
So we cut back to Renfield, who is carting all of these dead bodies from this crime scene back to Dracula. And we get to see him first time post the sort of prologue scenes that we had seen. And Dracula's fucked up, man. This is the other part where I will call out practical effects. I'm fairly certain the various stages of Dracula's fucked upness was largely accomplished with actual like makeup and shit like that.
I think it was. Even after we watched it, I kind of shouted out that I think there might have been like a feature in Fangoria about this, if Fangoria still existed.
Yeah, 100%. None of that weird shit from, say, Ghost Rider 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Dracula is incredibly burnt and drippy faced, but still undeniably Nic Cage. So Renfield gets scolded a bit, and we get some really solid Nic Cage lines that we'll eventually have to rip for the soundboard, where Dracula is talking about wanting to lean into being the ultimate evil and not so much a parasite and take over the world. And I can't remember the exact line, but Nic Cage throws a woo in the middle of delivering this "we're going to take over the world" shit, or I should be a god.
Well, the take over the world thing is a separate scene. The first one, Nicholas Hoult is like, we need to lay low and make a life for ourselves, and then Dracula interprets that throughout whatever time that they're away, that, oh, I need to take over the world. That's how I'm going to make a life for myself.
Yeah, okay. So I'm getting the timing off a little bit. I just remember him doing the woo bit when he was really burnt up, right?
Yeah, it was when he was, because there's like 2 scenes where he's all jacked up still
Yeah.
before he starts to coalesce into a more human form.
And then so he scolds Renfield on the quality of the meal that he's brought back to their lair, indicating indicating that he wants, purity, like nuns or a bus full of cheerleaders. And there's a funny bit where he's like, I don't care if it's like male cheerleaders or female cheerleaders. It's not about gender, it's about purity, okay? I'll eat whoever. That I thought was a funny bit.
Honestly, I think they should have leaned more into that, like having Dracula as vaguely socially conscious, but still a monster.
Yeah, like in the worst way. Go real liberal with it. Like,
Yeah.
he's careful to say the right things and still just be an absolute piece of shit.
Yeah,
I would have
them
liked that.
Yeah, I want some they them blood. Non-binaries only, please.
But yeah, no, he was very specific about being non-discriminatory, which makes me wonder what sort of fucking media access he had in there, because I don't know that he would give a shit about that in general.
I do have to shout out his lair. His lair fucking rules. It's got this throne of blood bags in it, which is awesome.
I was about to mention that because it was too cool to fucking pass up. Yes, he has like a throne thing, and there's just 100. It's the Game of Thrones throne, but with a bunch of IV blood bags, which is pretty cool. Looked very neat.
Shout out to the set designers.
Yeah. That was probably the best set in the film, I think. At this point, Renfield has been sent back out to hunt again, and he goes to a restaurant.
Wait. So right before this, I can't remember if it was right before this now. When Teddy Lobo leaves like the holding cell, was that before this scene? I think.
Yeah, that already happened. That was the first time we're inside of the police station.
Because I don't think we mentioned this, that he is literally confessing to a wall.
Yes, yeah, he's confessing to the mirror, the fucking one-way mirror. He is
saying everything, and then his lawyer walks in, and he's just like, "Yeah, you got nothing. I didn't say shit."
Yeah, Ben Schwartz did a pretty decent job in this film. I'll give him credit 100% on that. Very funny.
And they just let him walk because bribery.
Yeah, basically. So Renfield ends up at a restaurant, and I can't remember if there's a tie-in specifically for why he ended up at this exact restaurant, but essentially he's looking for innocent victims. This is right after his scolding from Dracula.
He was in this restaurant at the beginning of the movie. There's like a single shot where he's like writing something at the bar or like whatever, but it's a recurring set that I think they like either rented out or retrofit another restaurant to look like this. I don't know if it's a real one. I'm gonna look that up though.
Because during this scene, the cops show up because they found like a business card that Renfield had that like fell out when he was in a fight with the henchmen, I believe.
That's not what it was. It was a pen from this restaurant with their branding.
Right, because I was half right, because that was the one that he stabbed either one of the guys who stole the drugs or the hitman. He stabbed him in the neck with it.
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay. I thought the pen stabbing happened at the restaurant. Okay, so the pen stabbing happened at the apartment with the ska guy, and that leads the police there, and he's gone back there just because it's a place he's been before to look for victims. Okay, so that's the setup. Rebecca has found this pen and gone to investigate this restaurant. And I don't remember exactly when she does this, but she does also eventually hand off the pen that has been used to stab somebody to her FBI sister, asking her to get analysis done on it, like DNA analysis, right?
Yeah.
So Renfield's at this restaurant. Rebecca Quincy shows up at this restaurant, and Tedward Lobo shows up at the restaurant with a bunch of goons.
Still can't believe they named him Tedward.
Tedward. The level to which it cracked me up while I was taking down the notes is a little embarrassing, but it did give me a solid laugh. So the Lobos gang shows up, and of course they all put on werewolf masks or wolf masks, and then go in there specifically to, I think it was to make an example of Rebecca. And so they show up, and of course a firefight breaks out. Renfield sees the danger that Rebecca and the innocent bystanders are in, and eats a bug, and we get another absurd over-the-top fight scene. The big over-the-top bit in this one is at some point Renfield picks up a serving platter and whips it through the air like Captain America, at which point it severs both of the arms of one of the Lobos goons. Meanwhile, Rebecca, of course, being the other protagonist in an action flick, demonstrates her ability to be pretty badass, shooting a bunch of bad guys pretty indiscriminately, while Renfield does his vampire karate and uses his super strength to dismember people in very violent fashion.
Doesn't he use the arms as nunchucks?
Nope,
That's
not
later.
yet.
Yeah.
Damn
Not
it.
yet.
Damn. Well, spoiler alert.
That's in like the apartment complex fight
Yes.
scene later.
So there's 2 scenes where he severs people's arm. Okay. All right. You know what? Fine.
Exactly. So Teddy is, as far as I can tell, the only Lobos member that escapes the scene with their life. And this also ends with a, like, not romantic, but appreciative back and forth between Renfield and Rebecca.
I believe fans of young adult fiction would call it a meet cute, which is a term I fucking hate. But
wait, what are they? A meet?
A meet cute. Yes.
Is it like MEAT? Like they're both
No.
piles of
No,
meat?
No,
that would be way cooler.
That would also be more appropriate for this film's utilization of it.
True.
But like they clearly have some chemistry right off the bat.
Yeah. All right. So here is where I'll mention another quibble I have with the film. I could have mentioned it in the very first scene that we run into Aquafina in. I'm sorry, the second scene, because in the police station, it is very much apparent. We've mentioned it before on the podcast, the overwhelming influence Joss Whedon has had on dialogue written in films and television is a scourge upon mankind. And this movie is not immune to it. At least it is self-aware enough to, I hope, understand what it's doing. So maybe it's excusable, but it is still a little nails on the chalkboard for me. It's like, did I see you throw a serving tray and sever guys' arms with it? It's like the that just happened. He's standing right behind me. Shoot me in the fucking head with this. Yeah. I do not like this style of dialogue.
No, I'm fine with long dialogue and ham-fisted dialogue, but like, yeah, the whole played for comedy, he's standing right behind me, isn't he? That's what this was.
It is 100%. It is, and just so that you know that I'm fair in my criticism of some writings, I also have a hard time with the overly art house. It's all prose and it's all a metaphor, and none of this is what we're actually saying shit either. Like, for instance, Killing of a Sacred Deer was a hard watch for me. I understand what it was doing, but that style of back and forth dialogue also bothers me. So highbrow and lowbrow, I'm coming for you.
Yeah,
right, better
highbrow. It can work. It just doesn't usually. I mean, like, Mother does that, and I did not like Mother.
I don't know anybody who liked Mother.
It got some weirdly large critical praise from a few people, but like,
I didn't hate Mother with the same intensity that I did Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Oh, I'm the other way around. I fucking hated Mother, but I thought Killing of a Sacred Deer was just like a C-.
Well, Mother takes you about 17 minutes to understand like what's happening. And then you have to like sit through it until it hits you with the twist that you figured out an hour ago.
Yeah.
I would say figuring it out 17 minutes in is relatively impressive, or I'm just a rube, because I was like, what the fuck is this movie for the entire first half of the runtime? And then I was like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Whereas Killing of a Sacred Deer, from the very first from the very first back and forth with characters, I'm like, I get 100% what's happening, and I don't like it.
Fair.
I would say an example of amazing use of that sort of vague prose or roundabout prose that worked 100% was Banshees of Inisherin. That is a great example of how to do that shit. So yeah, back to the lowbrow version of our criticism, real Whedon-esque dialogue here, but it is what it is, and now our two primary protagonists have met in a way that definitely implies and results in them running into each other again later on. So I do think actually it's after this scene when Rebecca goes back and again tries like, hey, I just got attacked by a bunch of Lobos. Are we going to do anything about this? Or are you guys corrupt? Like, what the fuck is going on? I think it's at that point that she brings the pen from the original murder scene to her FBI sister. And it's also at this point in time that Renfield starts reconsidering his relationship with Dracula and trying to strike out on his own. I think we get another shot of the group therapy sessions, and he makes this decision. Before I get too far away from it, one thing that's a couple of things that happened during the restaurant scene that are very funny because they were just explicitly referenced is at some point a literal busload of cheerleaders goes by the outside of the restaurant. And then after Renfield and Rebecca have saved everybody in the restaurant and the innocent people that were there as well are applauding their efforts, included in that group is several nuns. So two of the explicit type of victims that Dracula requested show up in this scene immediately thereafter. And I do think it's at this point upon Renfield's return that Dracula, looking slightly less fucked up, but still fucked up.
Yeah, you can still see his brain.
Yeah. Reveals his we gotta make a life for ourselves, and here's how we're gonna do it. And he has sort of like a yarn thing conspiracy board, but it's about how he's gonna take over humanity and sort of dominate everybody.
But he also has and Renfield on a sticky note.
Yeah, it's on a sticky note.
Right underneath it.
It's been a minute since I watched it, but I think this might be referencing the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula movie in terms of the visual style of the documentation that he has on the walls. Because
Like,
that movie is heavy into the epistolary aspects of the novel.
Like, he does have like Dracula's name all done in really nice calligraphy.
Yes.
And then like a pyramid of how he's going to control the power structures underneath it. And then on a sticky note stuck right under the Dracula name is and Renfield.
It's pretty good.
It is. It's funny, and we get some more real solid Nic Cage, who, by the way, is there's absolute nods in his performance to Vampire's Kiss with his facial expressions and things like that. While also drawing from some of his later performances with the over-the-top shit like Face Off and things like that, which is funny because I just recently saw an episode where he mentioned utilizing the shit that he did in Vampire's Kiss, where he was given much more free reign in Face Off specifically with his expression work and so on and so forth. So I thought that was interesting. It was neat to see in this film. But I do think that's a good place to cut it, because I think that is basically the first half of the film, and then we sort of roller coaster down from there to the climax of the film.
Yeah, this is a point where we go from having just like characters doing stuff to heroes and villains.
Yeah.
It delineates pretty formulaically from here on out.
Yeah, which is it's fine. Like, this is one of those movies that I wasn't expecting too much. It was a fine hour and a half. It had some things I really liked, had some things I really hated.
Yeah, it's a popcorn movie.
Yeah, it's one of those that's gonna hit our entertaining, but that's about it. There's really nothing below the surface here. If you like a sort of CGI gore fest, have at it. But we'll get to all of that at the tail end of our next episode, where we give our full thoughts start to finish after we wrap up the plot. In the meantime, of course, please follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at cagefight_pod. Keep hearing about this amazing Patreon that we have, where we're definitely reviewing The Wrestler very, very soon. So keep an eye out for that. Where can we find that again, Rich?
Yeah, that's patreon.com/Nic Cage Fight. We will be reviewing The Wrestler very, very, very soon.
It better be soon. I bought a copy of that at Goodwill the other day in anticipation.
Wait, did you really?
I did, yeah. It was
all right, then we
$2,
have
and I
to
was
do
like,
it.
Shit, yeah.
This joke may have to end soon.
Yeah, I bought that and Snake Eyes because they were both $2. It's like, all right, yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'll own those.
Hell yeah, Snake Eyes.
Especially considering the fact that the copy of The Wrestler that you bought was Mickey Rourke's previous personal copy at that point.
Yes, it definitely was.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, listeners, we appreciate you.